in town, and I see that the whole board is present, so it's 7 o'clock on my computer. I'll call the Brandon Select Board to order. And before we get underway, if you'll allow, I got an email this afternoon that I would like to read you a portion of. It says it's from President Biden. It was not direct to me, it was through some intermediary. So he says, as of this week, during the dark winter of the COVID-19 pandemic, more than 500,000 Americans have now died from the virus. That is more Americans who have died in a single year of this pandemic than in World War I, World War II, and the Vietnam War combined. On this solemn occasion, we reflect on their loss and on their loved ones left behind. We as a nation must remember them so we can begin to heal, to unite, and to find purpose as one nation to defeat this pandemic. In their memory, the First Lady and I will be joined by the Vice President and the Second Gentleman for a moment of silence at the White House this evening. I ask all Americans to join us as we remember the more than 500,000 of our fellow Americans lost to COVID-19 and to observe a moment of silence at sunset. So sunset in Brandon was an hour and a half ago, but I think in the spirit of national unity and remembrance, I would like to ask all of us tonight to observe a moment of silence as requested by President Biden to remember the loss of 500,000 Americans during the pandemic. Thank you for joining me in that moment of silence. The agenda was posted in the usual places and distributed in advance. What's the pleasure of the board on the agenda?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve in a second. Are there any adjustments to be made?
Question of order, possibly, Chair. Under number 9, Planning Commission appointments. I'm questioning: are we talking of naming somebody to the Planning Committee tonight before interviews? I thought that we had asked to have interviews on this item.
We have an executive session for sure to talk, to look at the letters. Dave, did we have any contact with the 3 folks who applied for the Planning Commission slot to see if they could join us tonight?
No. I wasn't under the assumption that you guys were interviewing people tonight.
Okay. So do you want to, Doug, what if we talk about whether or not we want to interview?
I would then suggest that we change 9A to be, instead of naming a Planning Commission person, to discuss whether we're interviewing. I don't understand how we could name somebody in 9A and then discuss their letters in executive session at number 13. So
do you want to move the item? Do you want to move the 9A to follow number 12?
Fine with me. It still bodes the question of whether we're interviewing first or not.
Seth, I believe the only thing that we had to that we discussed about interviewing, that we were going to interview, that was going to be for the ACO, and I believe that we kind of left that interviewing for the Planning Commission seat, that we weren't going to do an interview.
Okay. Other thoughts?
I'm still on. When we look at our new policy that is we were working on last month or 2 weeks ago, and we were going to be voting on tonight. The number 4 is the board will determine whether interviews are required. So the interview question comes up about the planning committee where we have more than one person. I'm not trying to be a pain in the ass. I'm just trying to determine how we're going to do that, because I do not feel prepared.
This is a family show, Doug.
What?
I know it's your last meeting.
In my last meeting, yeah. I do not feel prepared to vote on people that I do not know. So
Okay,
that's a difficult item.
What if we do it this way? What if at 9A, we have the discussion about whether we wish to interview or not? And then we can have the executive session if we, and depending on the result of the discussion about whether we want to interview or not, we can either appoint or not tonight.
Fine with me.
Does that make sense? Any objection? Okay, if there's no objection, then we'll keep 9A where it is, but we will do it with the understanding that we're going to use 9A to discuss as a board in public session whether we want to interview the candidates for the planning commission slot. We've had 3 people apply for 1 seat. Any other changes? That's not really a change, but are there any changes further to be made? Okay, if not, ready to vote on the agenda. All in favor of the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. That's unanimous. How about number 2, the approval of the board minutes of February 8th?
So moved. Second.
Mr. Wyman moves and Mr. Coolidge seconds approval of the minutes of February 8th. Any errors or omissions in the minutes? You don't see anyone? All in favor of approval of the minutes as submitted, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say no. It's unanimous. The ayes have it. Item 3, then the town manager's report, please.
It's my report for the weeks of February 8th and 15th. The Park Street project has been officially closed out by V-Trans. Markowski will be back when weather permits to fix a couple of the punch list items. One is repaving the intersection on the east end and install a riser on one of the sewer manholes about halfway down the street. Had a meeting with our VLCT passive rep, Wade Major, to do an annual overview and discuss future needs. As you guys know, this is where we get all our insurance from. An interesting thing that was pretty cool to see is they did our workers' comp mod rate. That in 2016, it was at 1.89%, and we are down to 0.79%. So we've cut it pretty much in half since 2015 by all of our employee education we've been doing and well-being, and it's really paid off. That's saved us a ton of money. Public Works Department's been working around the clock, plowing and removing snow. The last big storm produced a good amount of rain that hardened the snow and made it difficult to move. As you know, all of you folks know, the sidewalk plow has been out every day plowing and treating the sidewalks. Sometimes mailboxes are damaged by plowing, and sometimes snow will fall in a driveway. And it's not intentional. These guys are out. They're out right now, doing the best they can to keep things clean. And sometimes, these things happen. So they're not done on purpose. Rec news, the skating rink at Neshobe Country Club's open. It's been used quite a bit, which is nice. People are excited about it. And baseball planning is starting. There'll be a county meeting held the first week in March. And that's all I have this evening.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the town manager from the board first? I just might take a minute then. I want to commend you for the workers' comp reduction. We've noticed during the budget planning workshops that's significant money. That's tens of thousands of dollars on Brandon's budget that are being saved and not being spent on a premium. And that is based on improvements to work safety and employee safety. And we're grateful to our town staff and to Dave working with the league to implement some training programs and so forth. I think that's really wonderful. I did want to ask a question, Dave. Can you give the board any just general status on, I know the 2 union contracts are reopening. Can you just tell us, without getting into collective bargaining stuff, like kind of where we're at in that process?
Sure. The AFSCME contract, which we only have 2 employees left in that union. Chris Kilmer, our rep, and I've been having some discussions over the phone. There's really not much change into that this year. A couple of things that we did within the year was, getting rid of I'm lost for words tonight. The clothing companies that we used for wastewater and highway, they were getting really expensive. They weren't providing what the guys wanted, so we decided to go with them buying uniforms and their work clothes, and it's actually saving us a ton of money already. So that was in there, and then just tidying up some of the language of taking things out from the past in that contract that aren't, there's nothing to them anymore. So really not much going on there. The PD one, I haven't heard much from their rep. I did speak with Adam Murek about it a couple of days ago, so we're going to try to get something rolling there, but I don't see a lot of changes there either. We might work on something like the longevity, or how we can do some retention for PD for officers and try some incentives there, but I'll keep you posted on that one.
Thank you. And lastly on my list is there was a letter from a resident near Estabrook Park, and just wanted to touch base with you about, is the response coming their way, or is the board, what's the next step there?
So Bill Moore has actually been working on the response. I believe he finished it up today, and we'll get it out.
Okay, great. So I appreciate that. Other questions from the board for the town manager? Or questions from the public for the town manager? Bill Moore.
I don't have a question for Dave because that'd be untoward. But I did want to make an announcement, something that happened after, that solidified after I submitted my report to Dave about rec, and I just want to make sure that it was heard by everybody. I'm just going to reread a post I put on Facebook. Sometimes this job makes me cry. I have a friend and colleague, Dustin Hunt, who's the Middlebury Rec Director. I reached out as our community has been reeling from the loss of a dear friend, a volunteer, parent, and Brandon rec coach, Crystal Wheeler. He generously offered to carve out some gym time so that our 5th and 6th graders could have a basketball experience during the spring. This amazing gesture is an example of why we take care of each other and honors the kind of community that people like Crystal helped to build. And I just wanted to, make sure people understood that it was super kind of generous. The school is not allowing us in. They have a facility and they are allowing us in, and it was just an amazing gesture. And I just want to make sure everybody knew about it.
Oh, so nice. Thank you so much, Bill. Other questions for the town manager from the public tonight? Sure, Claire.
Okay, got it. I just want to say thanks for getting those sidewalks done. It's kind of been a pain, I think. I don't have a sidewalk on my side, but the other side, which we use, and our dogs love it. And it's been snowing a lot, not a lot all at once, but like it feels like every 30 or 40 minutes something drops. And so thank you so much. Tell the guys thanks.
I will do that. Thanks, Claire.
You bet.
Thank you. Further public questions for the town manager? Sue Gage. It's dimly lit on my screen where you are, Sue.
Yeah, I know. I'm in the dark. I'm always in the dark. I just wondered if I mentioned something about that crosswalk from the bank to the Congregational Church. I just was curious. It happened again where I was in line going towards home, and I was stopped because of the red light, but the other way was coming at us going north on Route 7, and someone was trying to cross that crosswalk, and for some reason people they get that green light and they just shoot through there, and I don't even think they see that crosswalk. And this is the 3rd time that someone's been in the middle and like jerked to a stop because the car never even sees them and doesn't stop at the crosswalk. So I just didn't know if there was any thought about doing something with that.
Dave, did you have some thoughts about enhancing visibility?
Yep. So actually, Bill and I were talking about this last week too, with hopefully some future projects. I did mention that to V-Trans when with that crosswalk and the crosswalk down by the post office, that the one at the post office is a little different. It's just dark there at night. So they don't seem all that motivated to get any signs for us, but they have given us a ton of money. So we're going to look into getting some solar crosswalk lights and see if we can do it on a couple of those areas, probably there and up by the post office. So that's really all I have for that. There's a lot going on downtown. So we'll see what we can do. We had a sign out, but obviously it's hard for the guys to plow right now with signs in the middle of the road, and the paint comes off a little bit. That's not too bad because of the recessed lines, but it's hard to see when the roads are snow covered too. So
I think that's a great solution to try, is to get some attention grabbing lights there. Thanks for making those steps, Dave. Other questions for the town manager? Okay, if not, we can go into public comment and participation. I do want to note for the board, or for the public's information, that this is Doug Bailey's last meeting as a board member, and Doug is the longest serving member of the board who's on the board right now, and I just wanted to acknowledge it. He has told us many times, no cards, no flowers, no presents, no plaques, all that kind of stuff. So I took you to heart, Doug, and I didn't buy you anything, but wanted to thank you for chairing the board. Doug chaired the board for really his first 2 years or more on the board, and through a rebuilding time. And it's been a pleasure to learn how to be a board chair by studying under you. And it's been a pleasure to serve in collaboration with you for the last 6 years. So thank you, Doug. Are there any other board members with anything to have tonight? I do see a hand from Representative Jerome. She keeps moving around on my screen though, but
Sorry.
There you are. Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to say a few things. First of all, to thank Doug for his years of service. I know it's not always an easy job to be a public servant, and we certainly appreciate all you've put into this town. You've seen a big change over the years that you've been on the select board. So, and since you moved to Brandon, so thank you so much. I just want to a couple of things. I wanted to make sure that small businesses in town were applying to the payroll protection program through the Small Business Administration, and to just remind people that if they did receive one grant earlier, that they can apply for the round 2. So I would encourage folks to who own businesses to and have had a loss, experienced a loss, that they apply for that grant program through the Small Business Administration. And then secondly, in the House, we'll be voting on a COVID relief bill this week. It's was decided that we would work on passing this bill this week instead of waiting till July, because so many people are in need. And a couple of the highlights are there's $10 million that'll be going out to small businesses that have not received any federal or state assistance. So and those folks who have not received any assistance for their businesses and they've experienced a loss, and these are newer, we're really thinking about the businesses that were the newer businesses that weren't able to apply because of the rules. Those grants will be available to them exclusively for the first 30 days of the grant process. And then another thing I think that Brandon, I'm hoping will be able to benefit from is there's going to be about $3 million in Vermont outdoor recreation grants available from the state. And I'm hoping that there'll be a few shovel-ready projects that that Brandon might be able to participate in. Then there'll be also an additional $1 million for broadband to getting that last mile of line to a house that still needs broadband. So those are a couple of also there's money going to food banks as well as working lands. So those are all that will benefit all of us, and and especially those in need. So I am really pleased that the House is getting that money out to Vermonters during this tough time. And I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has any questions at all. Thanks.
Thank you. Bernie, do you have a question for Stephanie?
Well, I just wanted to piggyback on that, Stephanie. Bill and I have talked about this too, getting the word out, and we got it out in the newsletter. And I also went through the process myself. I got money the first time, and the second time's even easier because your lender will take your information from the first time. You basically fill out the new application, and within 3 days, I had the money in my account. So I've been really stressing that to all the businesses I've done in the past and checked up on some of the ones that did it earlier the first time around. So thanks for pushing that out.
Whatever we can do to help our businesses survive through this tough time. And this Agency of Commerce and Community Development was particularly concerned about the businesses that maybe started in late 2019 or opened in early 2020 and have somehow survived through this time and still haven't received much assistance. So if if anyone knows of businesses like that, I'm happy to help and spread the word, and the guidance will be coming out shortly as soon as these bills pass the House and the Senate and the governor signs them. Thanks.
Thank you. Other questions for Representative Stephanie Jerome? Okay, thank you, Representative Jerome. Appreciate the information always. And I see a hand on Brent Bueller. Go ahead.
Yeah, good evening. Doug, thank you for your service on the board. I really appreciate it. Well done, and enjoy your retirement. I think one of the strengths you brought to the board was your real strong financial background, and we'll miss that. So thank you again. And in that vein of financial backgrounds, I'd like to say that I was somewhat dismayed by the town report this year in that they eliminated the budget. So you really couldn't compare the performance by department, the actual to the budget. That was one of the things. I noticed another sheet that actually listed town employee salaries was no longer in there. And I just felt the report was disparate. They broke apart all the departments. So in my opinion, when you look at a budget, it reads like a financial statement. You look at it like a financial statement, you crunch numbers, and I just felt that was not able to do, especially with the budget column missing. So that's my 2 cents on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Brent. Would you allow me a response on that?
Certainly. I'd appreciate a response, actually.
Thank you, Brent. Yeah. So I was on that working group that was tasked with looking at the town report this year. And all three of the things that you pointed out are stuff that we made conscious decisions about and had thoughtful discussions about. So in terms of I'll call it the fourth column. I don't mean to imply anything by saying fourth column, but you know what I mean. The column that used to be there, right? That would, I guess in this book, it would have presented the proposed / adopted budget for fiscal year 1920. And that would have then been comparable to the actual. And then there would be this year's budget and then the following year's budget. So in terms of that fourth column, we did decide to not include it from the point of view of trying to make this more readable for more people. And I want to acknowledge that you have a lot of financial experience, certainly. And for you, it's perhaps not intimidating to have all of that level of detail. One way that we look at it is that, Dave and the department heads, and for that matter, the town staff, they're involved at a very, very granular level in terms of managing the budget once it's adopted. And then when we get to the budget writing sessions with the Budget Advisory Committee, the Select Board and Dave and the department heads and the Budget Advisory Committee, we're still involved at a fairly granular level, But even at that point, there's less detail than Dave would have on a regular basis. And then, so we thought, well, if we present this to the voters, we need to present it in a way that should be as helpful as we can to as many people as possible. So I guess I would take it as constructive criticism. And I, in fact, think that next year, if I were to be part of it again, or if I were to, question my decisions on this past year, I think on page 9, where we do present in the town book the summary, which sometimes gets called the roll-up page or whatever, that place where we talk about the whole budget department by department with just one line for each department, I could see where it would be useful to have included the previous year's budget. And I would suggest that next year, maybe that would be one change that we would make. I think within each individual department, I still don't know that it would be that useful. So I'm not sure I would want to have that added in within the original departments. A little bit further to that, in terms of breaking up the budget, when we vote in Vermont, we can vote on a town budget 2 different ways. We can either vote to set a tax rate, which I think virtually no town does, or we can vote to set a bottom line for spending. And that's what Brandon does. We actually set the bottom line for spending and the amount to be raised by taxes. And once that budget gets adopted, the town manager, in fact, has a lot of discretion given to him by Vermont statute to make the adjustments that he has to make as the year goes through. So one thing that we were thinking about with the writing of the report is that we consistently would get requests to have some explanatory material, some narrative or notes placed around various sections of the budget. And we thought that one way where we might accomplish that in kind of a global way would be to have each department's budget accompany its report. So that's all that the intention was there, was to put the spending plan for the town administration department next to the town manager's report, to put the spending plan for the police department next to the police department report, and so forth. So it was designed to kind of be a big note, so to speak. And it can be seen to be, disparate or disjointed, or you could look at it on the other way, which is how I would suggest looking at it, obviously, which is that we've integrated the financial plan along with the actual narrative reports. And your last question, I think, or point was about salaries being included. And as you know, we're living in an age, unfortunately, of identity theft, of a lot of privacy concerns. And I think that hand in hand with choosing no longer to print the names of taxpayers who are delinquent with their taxes and delinquent with their sewer payments, I think that there may have been a time for that. I think the time has passed. And I think that really we took a decision to try to be proactive to protect our employees. We have in Brandon a great town staff in all of our departments. We're so pleased with the work product they put out and their dedication to their jobs. And we know it's important to retain them. And we don't want to put them unnecessarily at risk by disclosing their name next to their annual salary. I think that it's just not a good practice anymore. The state of Vermont recommended to the towns a number of years ago to stop printing birth, marriage, and death names in the town report for exactly that same reason. And as someone who does genealogy for a hobby, I can tell you this was like highly disappointing to someone in my little nook of the world. It makes it much less convenient to do family tree research, but it's totally the right thing to do for living people. And so I think the same thing. I think we need to protect our town employees and their identity. And I will say that it's all still public information. And we did have at least one taxpayer write to, I think, me and one of the other select board members. I'm not sure who she wrote to exactly, but she asked for it. And we asked Dave to see if he could get the report generated by the town bookkeeper. And she produced the report that used to be in the town report, and we supplied it within 24 hours. So if that's something of interest to you, that you would like to see the annual salary for each of the town employees, that can be provided to you. I just don't think it ought to be published anymore. And we put the town report not only into the mailboxes of all the folks who live here in Brandon, but we also put it on the website. And I think that for transparency, we ought to continue to put it on the website, but I don't think that that particular page ought to be put on a forward-facing website anymore. So I hope that you find those reasonable. I don't mean to make them as excuses, but those were the reasons or the justifications that we had in mind for making those changes.
Thank you for the explanation, Seth. I certainly find the budget column, the fourth one, as you said, at least on page 9 would be helpful. I think there needs to be accountability by department on budget. And I understand that Dave has the authority to move money around, but it would be nice to see how each department is performing within its thing. You know, I beat the drum on the rec department now for quite a while, as the town plan says it's supposed to be self-sustaining. And this is now the third year for a total of $160,000 over budget for the past 3 years. So those are information I'd like to see. Now, as far as employee salaries, I understand the privacy issue. Then I think there should be in the front of the book a contact to call, or, you know, who do you contact for information, additional information you want. It seems counterproductive to have town employees' time taken up with numerous requests for information. So if there's a point of contact, because I will certainly request that page as well, if it's in there. So maybe that's something that needs to be added. If you want more information, please contact so-and-so. I guess that's it. I did not see when the grievance period was this year either under the assessor. There was a number of things, but that was another one I didn't see as well.
Sure, yeah, I can't speak to that one because that report does come from the assessors and they're the ones who handle the grievance process. So I don't know what to give you for information other than I believe it would be appropriate to contact the assessor during the assessor's office hours in Brandon. Can I get a nod of a head or a shake of a head on that one, Dave? Would that be the person to call? Yes. So the assessor, their contact information is in the book, and that would be the person to contact, either send them an email or
right.
Call
okay.
them. Yeah. Thank you, though. Thank you
okay, but I guess on the one hand, too, the less information there is, the more people are going to be searching for it, and the more town employees' time is going to be taken up supplying.
Yes. Yeah, and
the public, you know, as the public, we're working people. Our time is valuable too, and we have time hopefully to examine this stuff. But then to try and get more information to tie all the pieces together is equally as difficult from a time standpoint. So that's a concern. So I appreciate your responses. I know this was a transition. It was a tough year for just yet another transition with everything that's gone on and the fact that we're going to have a remote town meeting. So it just makes it all a little more difficult, but hopefully we'll get more information in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Brent. Other members of the public, items, this is public comment and participation, items that you don't see on the agenda elsewhere. Jan Coolidge.
Hi, I just have a comment and a question regarding the annual report. I thought it was very deserving that you dedicated it to Seth Clifford. I was surprised at all the things he had done because I've only been here, over 20 years. So I thought he was a very good choice for it. And as I was reading, what he's accomplished, being on the Justice of the Peace, and I read that and I'm like, well, Richard Baker was too. And then I read he was on the select board. Richard Baker was too. He was chairman of the select board. Richard Baker was too. He did many volunteer things. Richard Baker did too. And so I talked with some people in the community and they were pretty surprised that you didn't dedicate it to Richard. even though there was times that I didn't agree with him or get along with him, but he did do a lot for this town. And I just was wondering how you came to the determination of who to dedicate it to. And that takes nothing away from Seth. He's very deserving of this dedication, but I just wondered why you didn't dedicate it to Richard.
Sure, Jan, thank you for the question. I also tremendously appreciate Richard Baker's service to Brandon. And it really was rather a simple thing, and it's based on this framework. The framework we've been working on for the last, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 years, something in that range, is that we choose a recipient to dedicate the town report to who's given something to Brandon and who's still with us. And that we choose in the back, on the back cover is where we put the memorials. And that's really, in my mind, that was basically really the only question of eligibility, is that we have been in the practice, and I think it's a healthy practice for Brandon to recognize the contributions of someone whom we can thank in person, and they can receive that gratitude of their community. And so we choose someone to dedicate the town report to at the beginning of the book, who's a living person, and then we note the contributions of those who have passed on the last page of the book.
It's still disappointing that you could have done it in previous years when he was still alive, because he did accomplish a lot for this town.
Yes.
So I am disappointed that you couldn't do that.
I acknowledge that, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry that was not something that happened in a previous year.
Seth, can I step in?
Please.
Yeah, Jan, there's no question that Richard did an awfully lot, and I guess we started this practice my first year as board chair, and we've tried to pick one group of people, and we did Bud Coolidge and Terry Klein and whatever. It was always a single dedication at the front of the book, and unfortunately, God chooses to take some people before their time. And certainly, if we had known that Richard wasn't going to be here, we could have changed the orders or different things. But it becomes a decision that the select board chair kind of suggests who, people that we see, and we try to keep track of the obituaries to do the back page of the memory for those people who also have served the town. And didn't get their time. It's difficult, and unfortunately, not everyone's always going to make it into the book and have it dedicated to them. So I agree with you. Richard would have been a very deserving person, and just didn't happen. And that's it.
Thank you, Doug. Further public comment? Other folks? Lindsay Burke.
Yeah, hi. I was just wondering how we can request a copy of the report if we never received one in the mail. Thanks.
Sure, the town clerk can help with that. Sue, do you want to say anything particular? I'm not hearing you, Sue. Are you?
Yeah, you can stop by the office to get one. We're locked, but if you knock on the door, we can give one to you. And then we'll make sure to add you into the list if you're not in the list to get them. We try to do one per household, and it's not a very nice mailing list to manage. I'll just leave it at that. It's cumbersome and not friendly. So if you're not there, we'll get you on there for next year. But yeah, anybody can stop by, and it's also on the website if you want to look at it at all.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, we got it last year, so it was weird that we didn't get it this year.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
I'm
I'll
surprised.
stop by. Thank you.
But I'll double check it. Yes, just stop by.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Lindsay. And Bill did post in the chat on the Zoom meeting here the link, the direct link to the town report on the town website if anyone wants to go over and view it online. Other folks, other public comment, discussion? Sure, Sue Gage.
I just want to remind everybody that town meeting is a week from tomorrow. The election, the meeting will be a week from tonight. And hoping most people will return their ballots ahead of time. We're trying to minimize people going through the polls. But the polling place will be at the American Legion, and the hours are shortened this year. So it's 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. So hopefully people plan ahead if they are coming to the polls. You can drop we'll have an absentee drop area again. So you'll be able to drive up and drop your ballot off if you get it filled out and you don't get it back in time. But if you can do that, we'd prefer that than coming in and voting. We're trying to make that as small as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. And thanks to all the justices of the peace and other election officers who are helping you to run this election. Other folks tonight with comments that aren't on later on agenda items. Can always have public comment on each agenda item. Okay, we'll move along. Town report and town meeting discussion. We just got a little bit of info from our town clerk and treasurer, Sue Gage, about the election process. For town meeting discussion, all I know is that Bill Moore, our town moderator, and Tim Giles and I are supposed to have a Zoom webinar practice, right? We're going to do the informational meeting next Monday in Zoom webinar format, which is a little different than this meeting format. I don't know, Bill, have you got any little bit of information to give us about that?
It will be fun for us to practice on Friday. And I'm also, I took Tim's advice and tapped somebody to help out with some of the administrative stuff. So we'll be joined by the Brandon Free Public Library Executive Director, Molly Kennedy. She'll be doing the administrative stuff as far as the renaming and that sort of thing. So it'll be a good practice session for the four of us, and Friday, 2 p.m.
Excellent. Thank you, Bill. Looking forward to it. Does anyone have any questions? Anyone on the call tonight have any questions about the town meeting? How to attend? Sue has done, I think, a really great job putting it on Front Porch Forum. It's on the town website homepage. All the dial-in information or meeting ID information that you will need for both the fire district meeting, the school district meeting, and the town meeting. It's all there in one easy place, and we encourage you to participate in all of those meetings. Although, as Bill points out to me, no business will be transacted at the town meeting. It's purely informational this year, and the business will be done on ballots, which you should have received in the mail by now. Okay, perfect. How about number 6? There was a question that came into the town regarding the sewage treatment plant in light of the sewage treatment upgrade bond that we're asking of the voters on this town meeting election. Dave, do you want to speak to the concern raised in the question about the vulnerability of the sewage treatment plant?
Sure. As you guys know, or most of us know, that the sewer plant was built in 1960. We do everything down there offline. The upgrades that we're doing are mechanical. So we don't foresee having our wastewater treatment plant online anytime soon to run anything. So, I mean, we use a lot of electric motors and do a lot of things by hand still. So we're safe down there with that one.
And Dave, the site itself is, by Brandon standards, more secure than most, right? I mean, we have a fenced.
Yeah, we have a fence. That's about it.
Yeah.
It's not a real high traffic place. Yeah, I don't think we're putting it on the Brandon Walk Around Town Historic Buildings tour, but yeah, I mean, it's pretty old. It's which is the need for the upgrades, but it's very mechanical, and I think the only computer down there is used to send emails to me. So.
Does anyone tonight have a question? Anyone on the board or anyone in the public on the Zoom tonight have a question regarding the sewage treatment plant and its security? Okay, I do want to thank the person. Oh, yes, Brent Bueller.
Well, I'm the one that asked the question, so I appreciate the answer that it's not vulnerable to an attack, a cyber attack of any sort because of programming and that. Like I said in my letter, I'd hate to spend $5.7 million and then have a cyber attack on our sewage treatment. So thank you for the answer. I guess some things are better left mechanical rather than programmable. So thank you.
Our biggest concern down there is, as we've seen through the years, is, it's a gravity feed system, so it sits in the lowest spot in town. Flooding, that's the big one,
Right.
But that's our big problem. But there's really nothing we can do about that. So.
Okay, well, when I saw the article, my ears perked up, and sometimes, like I said, things happen for a reason. You can't ignore them. So
it's a good question. That's a lot of money to get attacked.
Yeah. So thank you all for responding.
Thank you for bringing that to the attention of the town. Appreciate it, Brent. If no further on that, we'll go to number 7, noise ordinance discussion. In the board's packet, there is a one-page email from me to the board with some suggested next steps regarding the noise ordinance. The board, or at least I believe the whole board, has received a number of community members' contributions toward the topic. I have at least responded with an acknowledgement that, yes, I got it, and it'll be part of the board's information that they consider. So those folks have all made their contributions. I appreciate those, and I know the board will when it goes to examine the community input. So we have a small board that operates by small rules. We can do the discussion before we actually have a motion to go for anything here. But I would I'm suggesting these 7 steps to hopefully become very active in listening, very thoughtful and deliberative in how we proceed regarding the desirability and creation of a noise ordinance. So what's the pleasure of the board regarding either what I wrote or what you might have to say? Tracy.
I like what you wrote, but the only thing that I guess that I have a question with is there is a lot of people in town that would not do Zoom. And I really strongly think that it's something that needs to be where we could, whether it's we did something outside or get to the point that we could do an in-person meeting. But my thought is that it probably ought to be something more than just Zoom.
It's totally a point that I did not fully develop. I thought we might have a couple of Zoom hearings and then solicit written input, written comments from other folks who didn't want to do the Zoom. But what's the other thoughts on the board regarding the desirability of maybe doing an outside meeting of some point? I don't know how far into the spring we'd want to plan that, or some other COVID appropriate hearing setting. Any other thoughts?
We could do it at Estabrook.
What's that, Bill?
We could do it at Estabrook. We have power down there.
Like in the little pavilion? Is that what you mean? Or
pavilion, or even a drive-in style on the other side where the drive-in movie theater is.
A drive-in style, like where people would stay in their cars and.
Yeah, maybe we'll be better beyond that, but we could plan for something like that where you're parking in the field and loudspeakers, the whole nine. Ironically enough.
Totally interesting.
Noise ordinance. But yeah.
Very interesting. Tim.
Yeah, another thing that strikes me is that it sounds like the intent of your 7 steps is to really solicit input from everybody we possibly can. And Tracy's right. You want to make sure it's accessible to everybody. And so if they don't Zoom, But I'm wondering if it might be reasonable to have the suggestion that they reach out to one of the selectmen to have a conversation, because that's the kind of thing that could be done in smaller numbers. It's the kind of thing that could be done in a socially distanced, masked way that would allow people to express themselves. I'm not sure that I get. It seems like the purpose of this isn't necessarily to have a group discussion as much as it's to have an input of experiences.
I would agree with that. Like it's not the purpose to like get together as town meeting, so to speak, and try to convince our neighbors one way or the other to our point of view. It's just to get our point of view to the board. I'm a little hesitant to say that like so-and-so should meet with one of the select board members, and that select board member then kind of amplifies that to the board, because I just worry about like, telephones, so to speak, being accurate with people's true feelings, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
It's not a horrible idea. It wouldn't be my preference to say, well, I'm speaking for this person and that person, and maybe I wasn't careful with taking notes when I talked to them or something. I don't know. Other thoughts? I mean, we certainly should, ask for input on Front Porch Forum, perhaps through the newspaper, maybe the chamber newsletter. I don't know, things like that. I mean, we can do the outreach parts, but we do have to give folks a vehicle to speak what they want to speak to the board, either in a Zoom hearing or through a letter or something, or through some other format, some other kind of in-person format. Dave, I don't know, do you want any role in this?
Well, I think I have a role in it by default anyway. I don't know. I guess the researcher in me, I've started looking around, other communities and stuff to see what works and what doesn't. And I guess I could just keep gathering the facts with that and seeing what our legal obligations are and go from there. And, however the board wants to put it together. We do have select board meetings twice a month, so there's a good amount of people here tonight, and that's a great way to have these discussions even before we have a hearing to adopt an ordinance. We've got a paper that can get the word out that things are happening. I think we could gather a lot of data and information just by mentioning that at our select board meetings.
So Tracy, what do you think would be the best thing? Something outdoors? I mean, I basically had thought that the board's going to reorganize on March 8th. I thought that the board should then set 2 Zoom hearings, and I thought they might do those within the month of March. Do you want to try and do some kind of perhaps outdoors thing at Estabrook within the month of March?
Well, I mean, weather permitting, or
Yeah.
like I said, usually any of the public hearings we've been to, if there's been any controversy, they've always been, if there was any controversy at all, everything was in person. I do know that people have spoke to me. That was one of the issues that they had, that they don't do Zoom, they don't do any of that, so they'd like to be able to do something in person. So I guess I don't know. That was just a suggestion of people that had come to me that I have spoke to.
Probably the transfer station would be about the right place to do it, huh? Except that it's a little bit cramped for space there.
Yeah.
But many, many people go there every week.
Yeah, they certainly do.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Bailey.
Yeah, my suggestion would be clearly starting with your Zoom and anyone that wants to write in, and depending on your timeline. I don't think you can get into Estabrook. March, we sometimes get the biggest snowstorms that we have during the winter. I can't imagine that we could plan too far ahead in March and be lucky enough to be there. But maybe by April we can, or maybe by April our COVID situation will be such that we could use the town hall to hold a meeting also. So I don't think this should be a rushed ordinance. I do think that clearly the amount of attention that is already gathered from the newspaper and the candidates forum, et cetera, this is a hot item, and it would be smarter to get it right the first time than to get it wrong. And I think it needs to be done right, and it needs to have the support of the citizens. It needs to have support of the police department that will be in enforcing it. So it's gonna be a tough one.
Sure. Those are great observations, and I wonder if the board, as far as tonight goes, maybe does it make sense to say, yeah, let's adopt these 7 steps for doing it and leave it to the board once it's reorganized to actually set the dates for the Zoom hearings. And also, as part of that or during that process or immediately following that process, take stock of weather and public health conditions and figure out, what is the best way forward for the additional community input other than letters. Does that sound good?
Yes.
Tracy, does that sound?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. I did want to make one little note. I particularly, in number 3, talked a little bit about anonymous input. I'm very concerned about the integrity of the process. There was an anonymous contribution that was submitted to the board through a third party. I responded to the third party and said, I didn't feel comfortable with it because I really don't know that was a Brandon person. There was no way to identify where this came from. And the third party, then contacted the anonymous contributor, who then called me, and that person and I had a discussion. And while we were on the phone, that person explained why he felt it was important to accept anonymous contributions, and I explained why I felt hesitant to do so. And I suggested to that person that perhaps anonymity could not be entertained, but confidentiality could. And so I suggested to that person that if they were wanting to submit their contribution without their name, that one of the select board members could then submit that on their behalf without their name, but the select board member will have verified that this is coming from a Brandon resident. That's really my only concern, is to make sure that I'm hearing from a Brandon resident and that the board is hearing from a Brandon resident. And so that suggestion met with the approval of the person who submitted the anonymous contribution. And I assured that person that we would consider that contribution and without their name, because now I know the person is known to me, the person is known to be a Brandon resident, and the person has reasons for not wanting to have their name attached to it, which I think is fine. What do you fellows think?
I think that's a good plan.
Yeah, I don't have an issue with that, as long as one of the board members does realize that it's a Brandon resident.
Okay, so we can go forward on that basis, that we can keep a name as confidential without keeping the contribution as confidential. The contribution can be part of the discussion. We can learn from it, but we don't need to attach the name to it in terms of discussion. Yep. Okay. So if that's, is there further input from the public or from the board about these 7 points before we go ahead and have a vote to proceed in this direction? Okay, if not, is there a motion to adopt the 7 suggested next steps regarding the noise?
I'll make that
ordinance?
motion.
Thank you, Tim. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Wyman. Any further discussion? All in favor of proceeding with the next steps regarding the noise ordinance that were printed in the packet, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say no. Any abstentions? It's unanimous. Great, thank you. Item 8 is the ratification of the policy on filling vacancies on boards and committees and of appointed officers and delegates. This is something that was held over from the last meeting because generally we do require things to be held over a meeting before we adopt a policy. So this was held over at Mr. Bailey's request. Mr. Bailey, you got any comment on this? We're not hearing you, Doug.
I do not have a problem ratifying the policy. I support ratifying the policy.
Is your third sentence, I move to ratify the policy?
I move to ratify the policy as you have so nicely written it.
Dynamite. Is there a second?
Darn it.
Second from Mr. Wyman to Mr. Bailey's motion. Is there any discussion? Any public?
My only-
Yeah, Doug.
I guess, again, as number 4, the board will determine whether interviews are required. That to me is the key, the key sentence, and I guess that would be determined by a majority vote of the board. I personally, and I'll admit this is my last meeting, so I have very little skin in this particular policy going forward. But my concern is if you don't interview people, then there are board members who are going to at times not know who the different people are, and they can do a disservice by not having an interview where they can make a decision. Case in point is tonight's planning committee meeting. I've only met one of the 3 candidates. And so I know who 2 are, but I've only ever physically met one. And I just feel it's a disservice to not look at things more thoroughly. So that's my only point. Thank you.
Thank you. Sure, Dave.
So just a couple things. I've been thinking about this a lot with how the board appoints things. One thing that it seems super helpful when folks send a letter of interest is to actually have something in the letter that states, where they come from and what they have to bring to the board. It's sort of, kind of an introductory letter to who the person is and, why they're interested. I think it's, it's kind of like doing a report in school. Have all that stuff in front of you guys. So you can make that decision just by a letter of interest. The other thing I wanted to add is something I've been thinking about a lot too is, we seem to be in this situation in town now where we have quite a few people that want to get involved, which is great. And one thing I really would like to see happen, and I think this might be the place to put it, is that I think if you're on the select board, I don't think that you should be on a select board appointed committee or board. I think it causes issues. I think it brings up some type of, there's always an authority person there because they're on the select board. And I think having that separation of powers is a really good thing to have. The select board is the select board. And, obviously we can go sit in a corner at the planning commission meeting and that, but I think there's enough people involved now where that separation could be very easy to do.
Thank you for that contribution. Other comment? Public comment? If not, is the board ready to vote on the proposed policy? If so, all in favor of adopting the policy as it appeared in the packet and was discussed last meeting, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say no. That was unanimous. Okay, so that's great. Good a policy. And now we've got appointments. I just want to say thank you to all of the folks who responded to the town's advertisement of vacancies. and appreciate everyone's willingness to step forward and do fairly thankless volunteer work in one form or another. This is important that we all have this level of trust and can appreciate the contributions of many people toward keeping our town working smoothly and toward making it the best that we can make it. So first appointment, there is a 1-year seat on, no, sorry, there's a 3-year seat on the Planning Commission, but the term actually does end in June of this year. What's the pleasure of the board on this? We talked about, do we want to have interviews? What's the pleasure of the board? Do we want to have interviews? I think Mr. Bailey's made a contribution in that direction.
I think we should.
Brian, you think we should have interviews?
Yeah.
Yes. So that's 2 for interviews. Tracy or Tim, thoughts in that direction?
I'm open to interviewing.
Open interviews?
Fine with it.
Okay, so if that's the case, then I think it naturally follows that we won't make an appointment at the moment. I don't know that we even need the executive session regarding it because I don't believe we have 2 of the 3 people. I think we have 1 of the 3 people here tonight. So Dave, can you ask all 3 applicants for the Planning Commission spot if they would be able to meet with the select board on March 8th, which is the reorganizational meeting?
Sure.
Is that the intent of the board? Does that sound right? Okay, so that's what we'll do with the Planning Commission. That's the only one that had more than 1 applicant for 1 spot for the available spots. What's the pleasure of the board regarding the alternate position on the Development Review Board and the alternate position on the Revolving Loan Fund Committee?
Make a motion, we appoint them both.
Okay, Mr. Coolidge moves to appoint, it's Jack Schneider has expressed willingness to serve as the alternate on the DRB and as the alternate on the Revolving Loan Fund. These are remainders of terms, again, that will expire June 30th of this year. Is there a second to Mr. Coolidge's motion to appoint Jack Schneider to those spots?
I second.
Second for Mr. Giles. Is there any discussion? All in favor of making the appointment of Jack Schneider to alternate for the Development Review Board and alternate for the Revolving Loan Fund Committee, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say no. Any abstentions? That's unanimous. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Schneider. And item 10, consider the Bergevin request. Dave, can you introduce this to us? We do have a nice document in our packet that includes the maps and stuff, which was so helpful. Thank you for that locator map.
Sure. So actually the map was given by the person that's requesting this. He did a nice job putting this together. So this is, the gentleman's name is Trevor Bergevin. He lives up off of Long Swamp Road and has quite a bit of land up there and is trying to find a suitable spot to put a mound system in. And there's a lot of swamp and stuff up there, so he's had a hard time finding it. But one piece of property up there that would be suitable for a mound system is currently owned by the town. So he is asking in the letter if we could do an easement for him to do it. I did speak with Trevor last week and asked if he might have any intention of purchasing the property from us. And he said that that could be a possibility. And it's not worth a lot to us anyway, so it might be a good way to approach this, and then he doesn't have to go through any easements with us and just acquire the piece of land there that's landlocked. And it actually is situated between 2 pieces of his property if you look at the map. So I really couldn't see any other interest in this piece of property other than him. Obviously we have to go through the process, so if the board would want to entertain that, I could certainly talk with Trevor and see if we can negotiate something up.
Tracy,
any way that we could waive the process for this particular instance or not?
No, we have to do the 1061 notice no matter what.
Well, I mean,
Up to you guys with your other process.
That's what I meant, the other process.
That's up to you.
Is there a rush in this?
Well, is there a rush? I don't know. I mean, he's looking at engineering the site, so.
Yeah.
Sue Gage.
We helped him pull this together downstairs, Luann and I, so I know that he's wanting to build something, so, I mean, there's kind of a rush because I think he's got to have that in place before he can actually move into a house. He's got to have that mound system, so I would like to see it. I mean, if we get that piece of land on the tax rolls, we start making a little money on it where nothing's happening right now. That's my 2 cents.
And so is that 18 acres? Is that what I see? No, it's more than that. 26.
26.
Yeah.
Well, you know how I feel, guys, about this. I agree with what Sue just said, that I've been that way forever about selling these lots. So I can reach out to him tomorrow and see if we can have a contract ready for approval by the next board meeting, and then we post it in the paper after that. So, but it's your guys' process. So let me know how you want me to do this.
Tim.
Do we know what the property's valued at on the records right now, town records?
So, Tim, we don't really place any values on our town property because it's not taxed. So,
yeah, okay.
I haven't done any research on this piece of property at all to see when we acquired it. This was just something that came in to see if, if this was even a possibility of conveying the property for. I mean, right now it's worth nothing to us. We collect $0.00 on it. So,
Mr. Chair, yeah, I clearly recommend that we allow Dave to work towards marketing the lot to him at a low price, and like we've sold other swamp lots, with his accepting a quick claim deed at his expense, following our current policy. And that's much better than allowing him to put a mound system on our land and opening up that can of worms to be followed ongoing. If you do it for one, you got to do it for anyone else who asks. So I clearly think selling it, and we know that we've sold swamp lots for just a matter of a few $100s with our new policy and them paying the closing costs. It's landlocked. It has no value to anyone but them.
So, is that the consensus of the board that the town manager will pursue marketing this lot to the requester of the easement and indicate that the board's not interested in granting or selling an easement, but we are interested in a quick claim transfer of the property for currency?
And did I understand that Doug said we were going to follow the policy that we have in place?
I think absent the board vote, I think we follow the board's policy.
If you would like, Mr. Chair, to make a motion to not allow an easement so that it's clean, that the easement way is not happening, but the purchase is, I'd be happy to make that as a motion.
Okay. Is there a second to the motion to not allow an easement?
I'll second that.
Okay. Is there discussion? Yeah, Tracy.
I would agree with that, but I think we need to be able to waive the period. I waive part of the policy to the point that the period of waiting to get other offers on it. I think that needs to be something that's left in the discretion of Dave, if it's a reasonable offer, to go ahead and accept it.
Thanks for that, Tracy, but I can't accept it. You guys have to accept it. So it's got the purchase and sale's got to be signed by the select board. So
Okay.
I can bring it to you at the next meeting. I mean, that's really as quick as we can do it. So, which is only a couple of weeks away.
Yeah.
And then I'm sure that he's not putting a septic system in right now in the middle of winter in the swamp area.
Yeah.
So so there's got to be some time for him to do this and for us to do it right.
My guess is they probably won't be doing anything until end of June or July, especially if there's any wetlands that they've got to go through up there. So,
And I think our process can still work in a timely fashion. I'm not suggesting we drag this on. I just worry about the precedent of abandoning the process, the policy this time.
I don't think it's required to waive the policy. I think that there's time. I don't think that the board, I think the board has a good consensus that this is what we want to do. We want to facilitate this person's goal, and it will be to the benefit of the town in the short run and in the long run to do so. But we do have a policy, and the policy means it's going to wait over a meeting or two.
so you guys would like something to go in the paper about this then, like immediately?
Why don't you talk to him tomorrow or whatever, as soon as you can, and say the board will entertain an offer on the property, get the offer from him, and then proceed through the policy by letting people know that, yeah, we've got an offer.
Okay, so I'm just making this clear that I'm going to miss the deadline for the paper this week, so nothing will go in the paper until next week. Just an FYI.
It's, you know, it's just the nature of doing business.
I'm just making a statement. It's totally up to you guys. You know my thoughts on this process now anyway, so I'm gonna be quiet.
Can I say something?
Please, Lee Cars.
I don't know how much space you would need, but depending on what you need to put in the paper, we might be able to work something out if you can get it to me in the morning.
Lee, my thought is I wouldn't have an answer for you until Wednesday, so I would.
Okay. I just want to put that out there.
I mean, I could just tape it on every paper. Follow you around with it. So yeah, thank you, but I can't imagine we'd have it ready for Wednesday, so, or tomorrow. I'll see what I can do, but I don't know if that's gonna happen.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. Yes, Claire.
Trying to unmute here, sorry. I don't know how you decide on the land that you have, like this sort of wet property, how it's taxed. Is it taxed by the acre? Is it taxed by the purchase price? By how many acres it is? How is that tax amount determined?
So right now, there is no tax amount on it, Claire, because the town owns it.
Right.
There's a system where they rate what the use is for the property. So swamp lots or wetland or landlocked are at a pretty low value. You know, NEMRIC will put a number in the database just to kind of hold its place, but it's really not effective until a sale happens.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, I mean, swamp lots they're at the lowest value possible. So, and if this must just have some dry land, or I don't know, I've never gone out and walked it. So, but they're not worth anything to us now. And we're collecting zero taxes on it because the town owns it.
Right. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Claire. Tim.
Yeah, so the last time we moved some swampland, just to give you a reference, Claire, they were between $100 and $200 an acre was what they had suggested the swampland might be valued at. But Dave's entirely correct. It isn't until it gets put into the formula that the taxable amount gets calculated.
Further comment? There's a motion, I think, right, Charlene? Is there a motion to not grant an easement? Yep. Any further discussion on the motion to not grant an easement? All in favor of the motion to not grant an easement, say aye. Aye. One, two,
Aye.
three. That's Giles, Wyman, Bailey. Who else? Anyone else? Bailey?
Aye.
Coolidge. Great. That's everybody. And we don't need to have any further motion, or you want to have another motion to direct Dave to proceed? I think Dave can just proceed based on the consensus of the board, and then he'll come back to us. Excellent. Thank you. That will be great. Item 3, why is there $1 million warrant here? What's this? What's the pleasure of the board on the warrant?
School districts have.
Mr. Coolidge moves to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Wyman. Right. Any questions on the bills? Doug Bailey, come on. Yep.
Yeah, I can't make my last meeting without one. I'm sorry. Page 2, halfway down, Du Bois and King. There's a bill for $2,400 and another one for $1,600 for site work for ride and park and ride. So I'm assuming that park and ride is a lot in back of the mobile station. Is that correct, or we got something else going on?
Nope, that's correct. This is mostly funded by grants, so.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. That's all I wanted to know.
Okay.
Great question, great answer. Other questions on the bills? If not, are we ready to vote? All in favor of the warrant as it was presented, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Any abstentions? That's unanimous. The ayes have it. So that was item 11. We're going to skip one of the executive sessions, right? But then we've got a liquor commissioners meeting to do before the other one. So the board's about to recess, but this is usually when we do announcements and stuff. Does anyone have any announcements that just came to mind? I do have one. Bill Moore posted in the chat the Zoom meeting link for the town meeting next Monday night. It's also in your town report book. Any other announcements? Okay, if not,
Mr. Chair, if I could, I'd just like to thank the people that said something tonight, and I wish you all the best in your elections coming up. It's really nice to see such a good group of candidates trying to run for the office, and I look forward to the progress the board continues to make. Thank you.
thank you, Doug. Other comments or announcements? If not, at 8:22, the board's at recess, and we're going to do a really fast liquor control commissioners meeting unless something comes up that I'm not planning on. So it's 8:22. I'll call the Brandon Board of Liquor Control Commissioners to order. Is there a motion regarding adopting the agenda?
So moved.
Wyman moves to approve. Is there a second? Second from Mr. Giles. Any changes to be made? If not, all in favor of the agenda as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Any abstentions? That's unanimous. Is there objection to taking items 2, 3, and 4 as a consent agenda if I disclose that I have a relationship with the Legion Post other than being a patron? Anybody want me to recuse from that? No, okay. So consent agenda: to approve the minutes, to approve liquor licenses for the Legion, the Jiffy Mart, and the third class for the Legion, and approve outside consumption at the Legion. That's a consent agenda moved by Mr. Wyman. Is there a second? Second from Mr. Giles. Consent agenda means we just go to vote. All in favor of the consent agenda, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. The ayes have it. That's unanimous. Item 5.
Motion to adjourn.
Mr. Coolidge moves to adjourn.
Second.
Mr. Wyman seconds, and those are not debatable. All in favor of adjourning, say aye. Aye. It's 8:23, and the Board of Liquor Commissioners is adjourned. Great. So now I will call the Select Board back to order at 8:24. And all I have left on my agenda here is an executive session and one last call for announcements. If not, we'll say our goodbyes.